Hi, firstly to introduce myself, my name is Shivaji Datta. I am a master's student in Change and Organizational Resilience at AcademyEX, and today I am presenting a project which is basically consumers orientation towards sustainable metric for clothing. So the idea came to me as I've been a designer all my life till now, uh, for the last 20 years or so. So I've been going through intense fashion design, for example, or clothing design courses. And during that phase, I saw how the environment is getting harmed through, manufacturing, and how the behavior of uh, consumers are changing through and throughout. So during that phase, uh, I, I started thinking of how can I make it more accessible or the understanding of sustainability more accessible to consumers in a sense. So it starts with the fashion industry is one of the largest contributors to carbon emission and social inequalities. While consumers are becoming more conscious, they often lack clear, reliable, sustainable information when buying clothes. Currently, tools like uh, Abor and Worldly, which are basically those tools which are, how do I put it, which are considered as the tools for industry in which the brands can themselves measure their carbon emission. And this is great because greenhouse emission gas organization, which is basically an organization which measures greenhouse gases via at different things and even at clothing, have already approved Abor and Higgs and Wordley for actually giving out this information to anyone and everyone who's interested. But you need to pay a certain fees for that, and that is what Abor, Higgs, and Wordley are doing. But mind it, it's not a consumer oriented, it's only brand focused, and that is one of the main challenges that I have faced when I was working, right? This create the but you know the thing is that current tools like Abor and Wordly, uh, Higgs index provide excellent data. As I said, through and throughout, uh, the fashion industry, they imperatively use it, to an extent. But then this data is not available for consumers. It is just designed for brands. This creates a transparency gap, in between, and that is the scope that my project aims to bridge. That is basically the whole idea of putting everything, in a singular perspective for consumers to see things more clearly and maybe aiding them in making better decisions when they are buying clothes. So, if you go to the other slide, so what is the problem statement? The problem statement is that the core issue is that while sustainability data already exists, you know, through Wordley and Higgins index, it isn't reaching the people who make daily purchases decisions. Clothing labels are often inconsistent, confusing, and sometimes even misleading. There's also a risk of greenwashing when data isn't explained clearly, because when these kind of data are released there and people don't understand it, there are chances that brands use them for greenwashing, which is also something that they are accused of. So the question is, how can we create a more, or transform a robust industry data into something which is very simple, which is trustworthy and consumer friendly at the same time, which makes it easy for people to understand. So, as for the aim of the research, the goal is to design a prototype metric system that makes sustainability information accessible and relevant to everyday shoppers, because everyday shoppers don't want to get into the technical jargon. They want something that is simplified, but which is relatively accurate. I can't say that anything is 100% accurate, but it is relatively accurate. This will help consumers, you know, make more informed decision while also supporting brands that are genuinely committed towards sustainability. Because now even brands are facing this vlog in which anything that they put out, a lot of the critics talk about greenwashing, and greenwashing is a underlining problem with the whole of clothing industry. Now comes the methodology. To achieve this, I have combined three streams of data for my insight, right? Using existing carbon footprint data, which is readily available from above from benchmark and Worldly Higgs Index for more detailed brand specific data. So they can provide you very specific brand data. So how it works is that you can put in the clothing, you can put it where it has been manufactured, and then, for example, how much it weighs, and it will give you an approximation which is very close to how much of carbon emission was done, because everything is done on an average. Then the second thing is that collecting consumers' perspective through survey, which I'm currently building up. So what happens is that once you put out these surveys to understand what information they want and how they prefer to see it, because the part of you gathering information is important, but how the end consumer perceives that information is more important, as for how I see it, because that is where the general blog is, that the data is already available but the representation of the data is not done to the to the proper way of doing it. And the third part is interviewing industry professional for practical insight. There are a couple of industry expertise whom I have met and who are already working in this field, for some time, and they have a different perspective towards this. This process will also be informed by reflective practices and cultural intelligence in the source of where I come and how things are. And culturally also, each place is different. So we need to understand a part of the cultural basis of where it's coming from and how things are, you know, being different in terms of perspective. And to the use of, you know, um, uh, like Triti Waitangi principles, and also it's a very interesting part because I have been born and brought up in the northeast part of India, where they are culturally different from how mainland India performs. So there's a lot of uh, similarities that I see there, on how they want their land to be treated, how they are fighting, uh, they are how sustainable they already are in their practices, and these kind of things can bridge over a cultural perspective towards it as well. So after that comes the survey questions. So some of the survey questions here, like why do you usually buy new clothes and what factors are mostly important, to choose. What sustainability information would you like to see on clothes and labels, like whatever is on the screen, like these kind of questions. Just a second, I'll just like these kind of questions actually define on how we can like create like a survey in which consumers participate, and they can direct us on which they think is easier, what they find is easier to consume, and what they find harder to understand. So that gives us a very definite benchmark through and throughout. So these things also, uh, like like the question, like these questions will help me understand not just what people value, you know, but also how to design the metric system that I'm proposing. Because it should be engaging, it should be easy to use, it should be something that is reflective on my part and on their part. And at the end of the day, they will be the end user of this metric system. So it's very important that we get to a point where they are the leading face of this. Going to the next slide, like what questions matter. So here, if you see the questions here, right, and here, it gives you a simple diagram of how we'll conduct in how the interviews are feeding the how the interviews, the survey questions, and can feed the consumer feedback, which can help me design not only help me design the metric system, but also creates an environment of trust and adoption, which is really important in our part, because if the metric system is not trusted, by the people, then it does not have a democratic approach towards it. And that's the whole idea, to give the entire uh, metric system a very democratic approach, in which individuals should have a say on how they want to see the data, which is a very, very important part of the system that I want to develop. And also, if most people prefer, for example, a red light labeling system, or or somebody likes a numeric system, or somebody likes a star rated system. So all these things can come into perspective, in which we can go through the survey and understand that what people want to perceive it as, and those things can really, really help us develop that metric system as a whole. And it also strengthens the case for industry adoption, as this survey will also show us the direction in which this metric system should be heading. Now, if we go to the like the culture and ethical lens. So the culture and ethical lens also is very important, because while the metric system is evolved for the consumers, of this part of the world, for example, for New Zealand. So, how do we connect it with the Treaty of Waitangi principles? So the three principles that are, um, very, very important in this kind of a project is partnering, participation, and protection, which I think, so when you make the survey more democratized and how you perceive the data more democratized, it really helps you go through that. Also, because of the any the Northeast indigenous traditions that you see is basically where I was born in India. So their perspective is very different. They have this reasoning of collective stewardship, reciprocity, which actually helps me find a better grip and ground for the entire project that I'm doing. It also ensures, that it is culturally intelligent, it is inclusive from all parts, and it is ethically sound, in the sense that, all people have been, like the survey can reach different people, and they can give me a feedback based on their perspective, right, and not the assumed perspective that we all understand. Now, about the timeline. So, this project, like the project is running for 20 weeks, which is until December, end of December. This includes, phase of conception, planning, data collection, analysis, and prototype design, and the final report, of course. This time limit also ensures a very structured approach, which allows space for reflection as well as for feedback. But also, I need to understand that it is a longer running project, and maybe this is just the start of something that I want to do. So this is just a phase that I need to go through to understand that this where this research can go and how far can we reach from there. So that gives us a very different perspective as well. Now, if we go through this, right, right now I'm in my data analysis and sorry, in my survey and industry outreach, which I'm currently forming, and hopefully by next week I'll be sending out my surveys, and by that time, I will a week or 2 weeks later, I can go into the data analysis and the prototyping phase once I've analyzed the data, because that will give me a very clear picture of what people actually want and how do I want to use it, because that actually creates the whole effect of how my project planning works. Because as for now, I'm working and doing this, so there are high chances that at places, I'm slowing down, and at some stages I'm going faster. But my continued research, especially peer-reviewed journals and all, are continuously going on. So once the survey is complete, I think so I'll have a much more clearer picture on where the direction of this takes place. Then we are talking about anticipated, benefits. So what kind of benefits are we expecting out of this project? So for consumers, this system will provide clarity and helps them make choices which are aligned to not industry standards but their own values, which is also, I feel, a very important part of constructing the whole metric system, because it shouldn't look forceful. It should look something that is natural, which is intuitive, which helps you understand a understand sustainability in clothing. Uh, I won't say better, but in a more easier, um, like in a more easier deliverance, which actually helps us understand the complete, picture of sustainability, and that can in fact, help us trigger something which will help the following, generation that is coming up, or the consumers, to just give them a defined idea of how sustainability looks when we simplify it to the very basic of, of the idea of first principle. So, yeah, so about that, for industry, at the same time, it creates credibility, transparent framework, and reduces the risk of greenwashing. Because greenwashing is a very important phenomena which is taking place all over the world, and big brands and small brands are all accused of it. So brands having something that is more dependable is just as important as consumers having it more, being more dependable on it. So that way consumers can make right choices and brand can help them make those choices very easily. And for example, for society, it supports a shift towards sustainable fashion practices, which is the end goal. Because if they shift, if the society even shifts slightly towards it, then like the dams can open, and ideas can flow in on how to use sustainability as a factor in clothing industry. Now for conclusion, it is about calling calling for action, as I call it, like a call to action, because this this project aims you to uh, aims aims one to become, more dependent on themselves to make the right choices rather than looking outwards, all the time. So if the data is simplified and it is put in a certain way, then it makes it a lot more easier for people to actually get involved in sustainable practices rather than making it difficult or having elitism attached to it, in terms of society. In summary, clothing has deep social, cultural, and environmental impacts, as we all know. By creating a customer-facing sustainable metric system, we can we can turn robust but hidden data, which is already available, into something that is empowering for consumers to for their everyday decision making. So my project aims to show that sustainability can be transparent, it can be accessible, and we can do it on a scalable fashion, rather than just keeping it exclusive for certain bands and only help them achieve it, and then the chances of greenwashing really, really decreases. It doesn't end for definite, but obviously it gives sustainable practices a fighting chance to actually prove how important it is. And thank you so much for, oh, I've already taken 20 minutes, so I'm really sorry about that. And thank you so much for being in this presentation. If there's anything that, I'm looking forward to the feedback that you guys will give me, and I will use that to make this project better. So thank you so much for viewing this, and I really appreciate your time that you have given to me. So thank you so much.